Thank you very much for coming this morning. We have a special treat for you with author Michael Buckley, and I'm going to introduce him in a moment. I have to say a few things about the book fair. My name is Patrick. I work here at Miami-Dade College, and we're very happy to have you on campus, and we hope that you're thinking about college in your future and that you think about us. It's a really great place. Now, I have to acknowledge our sponsors for the book fair. This is the largest gathering of authors in the nation, and we could not do it without our sponsors, the Knight Foundation, you would have seen their logo earlier, OHL Arellano, the Bachelor Foundation, and the DeGroot Foundation. So, I'm done with that part, and we are going to have the autographing in the green area with the author following the presentation. We're going to have him come and do his interaction with us, and then we'll take some questions from the microphone in the middle for students who want to ask the author a question. We'll save a little bit of time towards the end for question and answer. Let me introduce our author. This is Michael Buckley, and Michael's been a writer for television and a stand-up comedian before he became an author, and with the publication of the Fairy Tale Detectives, which was the first in the series of the Sisters Grimm's series. And this series features two orphaned sisters, Sabrina and Daphne Grimm. And it's very popular with children across the nation. It's celebrating its 10th anniversary. And the author is here to be with us and talk about his books. And I'd like to welcome Michael Buckley. Thank you.
What's up? How are you doing? Hello, Miami. I didn't bring my glasses, but some of you look like children. I think I need to check. Hang on. I need to see, get a little closer. Are you a child?
Yep.
Okay. You got child feet. Hang on. Let me see if there's any other children around here. You're not a child. You have a beard. You might be eating too much red meat. Hi, you're a child? You have little tiny hands. Yeah, you might be a child. All right, okay. I guess I'm in the right place. That's good. Folks, my name is Mike, and I am a writer. I write a bunch of different books. Like he told you, I wrote this series called The Sisters Grimm, and I wrote a series called Nerds, and I wrote a series about killer mermaids called Undertow, and I wrote this other thing called Harry Potter. Yeah, that was me. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about those books, but first I'm going to tell you about how I became an author, because it's a very exciting story. It has ninjas in it. It doesn't have ninjas in it. I just want you guys to like me. I'm going to start at the beginning. I was born in a town called Akron, Ohio. I don't know if anyone here has ever been to Akron, Ohio, but it is the most boring place in the whole world. The only exciting thing that ever happened there is we invented the zipper. Oh, yeah. Give it up for the zipper. Where would you be without the zipper? You wouldn't be able to keep your pants on. Now, there is another exciting thing that happens in Akron. We have this race there. It's called the Soapbox Derby. And this is a race where we put a small child in a box and shove them down a steep hill. So Akron is super fun on that day. Now, nothing exciting had ever happened to me until I was 16 years old. I was reading this magazine called Mad Magazine, which used to be a really popular magazine. If you don't know it, ask a grown-up. They can probably tell you a little bit about it. It's got all kinds of jokes and cartoons in it. In the back of the Mad Magazine, there was a contest that promised a big prize. And I thought, I'd like a big prize. And it was a writing contest. All I had to do was write a joke. So I wrote a joke, and I mailed it in, and a couple months later I got a letter back, and Mad Magazine told me I had won the contest. You guys want to hear the joke? All right. Why did the monkey fall out of the tree? Because it was dead. Yeah, it's a sad. Is it a joke? Is it a tragedy? Why did the chicken fall out of the tree? No, it was tied to the monkey. Why did the rabbit fall out of the tree? No, he just wanted to be like everybody else. And like I said, I won that contest, and they did send me a big prize, but it didn't come in a box. It came on a plane because it was a person. They sent a very funny person to hang out with me for a whole day. His name was Eddie Murphy. Now, you guys might know Eddie from the movie Shrek. He was the talking donkey. And he was in a movie called Mulan, where he was the talking dragon. And he was in a movie called Daddy Daycare, where he was the talking daddy. And he was in a bunch of whole other movies that none of you should see right now, because they are inappropriate. But when I was a kid, Eddie wasn't a movie star yet. He was on a show called Saturday Night Live, and I was a huge fan. So Eddie came to Akron to hang out with me for the whole day, but like I said, we were in Akron, so there was nothing to do. So Eddie and I decided to go to the mall and make fun of people. It was awesome. We walked around the mall and made fun of everybody. And then we got hungry, so we went to the Olive Garden and made fun of everybody in the Olive Garden too. Best day ever! And then, while we were eating our spaghetti and meatballs, Eddie told me the story of how his career got started, and he said that when he was 16 years old, which is how old I was at the time, that he started going to all of the comedy clubs in New York City. He started writing jokes, and he was performing them in front of audiences. And that's how he became a comedian. And he said he thought I was funny, and that I should do it too. So when Eddie went back to New York City, I went to all of the comedy clubs in Akron, which was one. And I said, I want to be a comedian. And the guy at the door said, son, you got to be 18 to be a comedian. How old are you? And I looked at him and I thought about all the times my grandmother told me to be honest, to never tell a lie, especially to a grown-up. And I looked him right in the face and I said, I am 18. And guess what? He believed it. Yeah, he was kind of dumb. So when I was 16, I started to do stand-up comedy, and that is kind of when I began to learn to write. Because a joke, in a lot of ways, is like a teeny tiny book. It has a premise, it has a middle part, and then, if it's a good joke, it has a big surprise twist ending. And that is when I began to learn how to write. I did this for a long time. I performed with a bunch of famous comedians, a guy named Jon Stewart, and a guy named Dave Chappelle, and a guy named Drew Carey, and hopefully none of you know who any of those people are. But while I was doing it, I also went to college. I went to this school in Ohio called Ohio University. If you like football, you may have heard of Ohio State University, which has a very good football team. I didn't go to that school. I went to Ohio University, which had an awesome checker squad. Yeah, there were no athletes at my school. People got hurt getting out of bed. But we did have one thing that was really cool. We had our own television station. Yeah, my school actually owned the local cable company, and they gave us a TV channel and all the professional stuff you need to make TV shows. So I got involved in that program, and this was another time I learned how to write, because I had to write sitcoms, and I had to write talk shows, and I wrote a very mushy soap opera where people kissed all the time. I know, it was so gross. You will never feel differently about that. But what I really learned while I was doing these shows was how to write drama. Has anybody ever heard that word before? Drama? Save your drama for your mama. Maybe you've heard that. Drama. Look at that giant TV that is distracting all of these children. Hello. Look at me. I'm a fancy person. I'm glued to it. Well, anyway, drama is just a fancy word for fighting and arguing. If you have ever seen the Kardashians, you know a little bit about drama. So I had to learn how to create characters that would fight and have conflict, because that's what we like to read in a story. We like to see characters that are having problems and they have to overcome those problems, and that's called drama. I did other things when I was in college. I wrote for my school newspaper, and I started a comedy troupe, and I was the lead singer in a punk rock band. I had really long hair. It went down to here. I was hot. Yes. Now, when I was about to graduate, a professor of mine pulled me aside, and he said, "Michael, I think you're a pretty good writer. You know, you could get work doing that, but I think you should do an internship." Has anyone ever heard that word before, internship? A few of you, not all of you. Okay, if you've never heard that word, let Uncle Mike explain it to you, because you're going to love this. When you go to college in the summertime, when all your friends are on vacation, at the beach, getting a tan, you are going to get to go work for a company all summer for free. Yeah! That's awesome! Working for free! Now, some of you don't seem to think that's a good idea. A few of you are looking at me like, what is wrong with this man? Who did they bring us to see? He has fallen on his head. There is something wrong with him. Well, there's two good reasons why you do an internship. The first reason is because when you go out into the world to look for a job, people want you to have experience, and an internship gives you that experience. But the second reason that nobody ever tells you, but because Uncle Mike is here, the best reason to do an internship is so that you can find out if the job you want to do is something that will make you cry every single night. When I was in college, I had a friend named Abigail, and Abigail wanted to be a marine biologist. And she studied in college for 4 years. She never did an internship. And when she was finished with school, she got lucky and she got a job at SeaWorld. So she could study sea life, which is what a marine biologist does. But guess what she found out on the first day? She hated fish. She was afraid of dolphins. She didn't like whales or sharks or any of the stuff that's in the water. And she took a long look at herself and realized she didn't even like fish sticks. So she had wasted all that time studying something, and she didn't have the experience to know whether it was something she wanted to do. So that's why I say do an internship, because it will help you save some precious time in your life. My internship was awesome. It was on a TV show that they used to make in New York City. It was called The Late Show with David Letterman. I don't know if you ever saw that show. It's now called The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. It's a talk show, and I was one of Dave's interns, and every day somebody super famous would come in because Dave interviewed super famous people. The first day I was there, I met Beyonce. She's pretty. And like a week later, I met this actor named George Clooney. He's pretty too. Yeah. I met all kinds of famous and glamorous people. But my job on the show wasn't super glamorous. One of the things I had to do was take care of David Letterman's dog. Dave brought his golden retriever to work. And golden retrievers are usually really happy dogs. But not Dave's. Dave's dog was a big, fat, yellow meatball of rage. It would bite me. It would bite children. It would bite old people. It would bite trees. It would bite itself. You know you're angry when you bite yourself. So, but here's the thing. Every once in a while, if that dog wasn't trying to murder me, they'd let me do something really fun. They would let me write a joke for the show. And every time they asked me to do it, I would get really nervous. Which didn't make any sense because I had been writing and telling my own jokes for many, many years in front of crowds. But I think it was because there were so many people that were going to hear my joke. Sometimes somewhere around 10 million people would watch that show on TV every single night. And there was also a pretty big studio audience, about as big as you guys here. And I would write my joke on a piece of paper. I'd hand it to Dave, and then I'd go up on the stage, and I'd hide behind the curtain. And I would look out at the audience like some kind of weirdo. And when Dave told the joke, sometimes it would get a huge laugh. And I would see a transformation come over people. Their eyes would get really big. Their mouths would open really wide. Their faces would turn pink. And they would rock back and forth in their chairs. And they would go, ah! Oh, that hurt. I think I peed myself. And I was back there behind that curtain watching this happen. And I would think, I did that. I made those people feel that way. I can control people's minds. I am funny joke writer man. The worst superhero ever. But it did feel like I had a superpower. It felt really cool. And I think that was the first time in my life when I truly understood the power of words and what they can do for people. And that if you write the right words, you can change somebody's mood. And if you write the right words, you might be able to change somebody's day. And if you write the really right words, you might be able to change a person's whole life. And to me, that sounded like a pretty good job. So I decided at that moment that I wanted to be a professional writer. Now, the first job I got as a professional writer had nothing to do with writing books. In fact, the first jobs I got were writing documentaries on a channel called the Discovery Channel. Now, if you've ever seen that channel, that's the one where there's a man standing next to a wild animal, and he is poking that animal with a stick. And then the animal eats his face. That's the that's what you discover on the Discovery Channel. How many times can you poke an animal with a stick? I didn't write any documentaries where people had their faces eaten, but I did do two that are kind of interesting I'd like to tell you about. The first one was a show called The Mole People. Now, you guys have probably never heard that term, but I live in New York City. Most people know who the Mole People are because the Mole People are a group of homeless people who live in our subway system. You see, we have this giant subway. It has about 500 miles of track that go to every corner of New York City. That's a lot of miles, and sometimes we don't even use those tracks. They've been abandoned. So homeless people have moved into those deep, dark tunnels, and they've built a city underneath the city. A few years back, New York thought there might be about 3,000 people living in the subway system. So I took a cameraman. We went to this place called Grand Central Station, which is a big train station in the middle of New York. We popped open a manhole cover in the road, and we crawled down a ladder. We went down a flight of stairs, and then down another ladder, and down a couple more flights of stairs, and oh, I've ruined the stage. Who are you? Tell us about yourself. You came up, now you're part of the show. Sorry. Okay. These people. She's not a child, right? Okay, just checking. Come over here, I want to see your shoes. Anyway, these people, like I said, they built a little city underneath the city. We went down there to see them, and I found what I would say is about a little bit of like a town. There were about 300 people living in this little tiny community, and I looked over at the cameraman and I said, oh, this is going to be depressing. We're going to hang out with a bunch of dudes who live in a tunnel. And it was depressing because they had better stuff in the tunnel than I had in my apartment. They had big screen TV. There was a guy who had a PlayStation and an Xbox. They had Netflix subscriptions. They had all cable television. They had beds and showers, microwaves. Everything you guys have at home, they had it in the tunnel. And people ask me, well, where did they get it? Did they steal this stuff? And I say, no. We live in America. They didn't have to steal it. Because Americans' favorite thing to do is throw perfectly good things away. On trash day in New York City, you could furnish a mansion with the stuff that's on the curb. And the homeless guys would see it, and they'd take it. And they'd go, hey, there's a couch. We need a couch. And then they'd take it down in the tunnel. And they go, hey, there's a toaster. I like toast. And then they'd take that down. And then people always say, well, where'd they get all the power and the water? And I was like, well, all of those electrical lines and cable lines and the plumbing for the city, it goes through the subway system. And these guys knew how to do things. They weren't always homeless. Many of them had skills, and they figured it out. And they'd turn on the water and the lights. And it was pretty amazing. They had a little community. In fact, they elected their own mayor. They had their own police department. And then I did another documentary about sideshow performers. You guys may have never heard of that term before, sideshow performer. But years ago, before the TV and the movies and the radio and the YouTube and the and the Dan TDM and the the iPod and the iPhone and the eyeball and the iHead and the iFoot. Before all that crazy technology, if you wanted to be entertained, you had to wait for the circus to come to town. And when the circus came down, they'd bring animals and rides and set up tents. They'd also bring this secret tent called the sideshow tent. If you went in the sideshow tent, you needed to pay extra money. But you also needed to be very brave because crazy things happened in the sideshow tent. People swallowed swords in there, and they breathed fire, and they put scorpions in their mouths, which you should never do. And I traveled with a group of sideshow performers because I wanted to know how they did those tricks. Has anybody here ever seen somebody swallow a sword? I had seen it on TV and I thought it was a trick. I thought it was an illusion. I would look at him and go, there is no way those people are swallowing the sword. So what I did was I rented myself an X-ray machine and I hooked a sword swallower up to it so I could see his insides. And then I gave him his sword and I said, all right, punk, swallow it now. And I watched him do it. I watched the screen. I saw the tip of the sword go down his throat, past his lungs, and into his belly. And then I barfed, because that's disgusting. And I learned that the trick is there is no trick. Those people were really doing that crazy stuff. And I met all kinds of weird people, like human pincushions and bearded ladies and tattooed men. After that, I went to work for another television station. It was called MTV. You guys probably know it as the Educational Channel or the Wisdom Channel. I worked on a couple of cartoons for them. One was called Celebrity Deathmatch, and another cartoon called Beavis and Butthead. Yes, I'm very proud of that. Then I got a job working at a channel called VH1, and at VH1 I worked on this show called The Fabulous Life of, where we would do a show on a famous person, and it would be like, The Fabulous Life of Justin Timberlake, and The Fabulous Life of Usher, and The Fabulous Life of Jay-Z, and The Fabulous Life of Lady Gaga, and The Fabulous Life of 50 Cent. And one day I went to work and I realized I hated my job. I didn't care about the fabulous people and their fabulous solid gold toilets, and the fabulous dogs they keep in their purses, and the fabulous people they hired to chew their food. I didn't feel like that anymore. I remembered there was a time when I was hiding behind a curtain, listening to people reacting to what I had written, and feeling a bit like a superhero. And I didn't feel that way anymore, so I quit, which was fabulous. Because the next day I got a job at a channel called Nickelodeon, which I think was a big turning point in my life. I had my own cartoon at Nickelodeon. You have never seen it. It was canceled after 5 seconds. But I got to work on a bunch of other shows on that channel. It was a big eye-opening experience for me because I suddenly realized how much fun it was writing for young people. It seemed like a good job for me, so I decided that that's what I want to do. And that's kind of what I've been doing. I write this series called The Sisters Grimm. Does everybody have one of these books? Everybody got one? Very cool. I'm glad. The Sisters Grimm is about these two kids who moved to a town where everyone is a fairy tale character. Like Prince Charming is the mayor, The three little pigs run the police department. The big bad wolf is a yoga instructor. And the girls take over the family business, which is being detectives. And they solve crimes that these fairy tale characters commit. There are 9 of these books, and I wrote them about 10 years ago, but we've brought them back out again with brand new covers and brand new designs, and I even rewrote each book. And I'm really excited and proud and happy that they're getting attention again. Being a writer is the best job I have ever had, and I know because I worked at Taco Bell. So I know the difference between a good job and a very bad one. Is there anybody here who's thinking about being a writer? Just a few of you. I should be happy that there's not a lot of competition. Well, see, you're probably looking at me going, why is he telling us about his life? Why is he boring us? Does he want us to think he's cool or something? Yes, I do. But why I'm telling you this is because I want you guys to see all the twists and turns that a person who writes can have in their life. See, when I was your age, they brought my school into this big room, and they had an author come and talk to us. And I don't remember the author's name. I don't remember the name of his book. But I do remember that he was about 100 years old, and it took him like an hour to get from the door to the podium. And he looked out at us, and this is what he said. This is really what he said. He said, every day, I go to my writing room, it doesn't have any windows, and I type for 7 to 10 hours. And then I pray for death. Okay, he didn't say that last part, but he did say the rest of it. And I remember sitting there looking at him the way you guys are looking at me and thinking, all right, let me get this straight. Every day you go to a closet, you sit in the dark and you type all day. That's your job, and you've come to our school to talk to children to let them know that this might be something they'd like to do too. And I remember also sitting there quietly praying that it would never happen to me. Please do not turn me into a writer. That sounds horrible. But I grew up. Somehow I became a writer, and I realized that that old guy didn't know what he was talking about. My job is not about typing or sitting in a little room wishing I had a window. In fact, since I became a writer, my life has been almost nothing but an adventure. I mean, I've been eating spaghetti with talking donkeys and crawling around in subway tunnels and hanging out with bearded ladies and writing cartoons that made my grandma cry. I mean, I've been doing all kinds of fun stuff. In fact, if you ask me what my job actually is, my job is to have a big life. Because if I haven't got these crazy experiences, I don't have anything to write about. Like, for instance, here's something that I did for my job recently. I'm writing this story about a boy who has fallen out of a spaceship as it's taking off from a planet, and he's like falling. And I realized I don't know what it feels like to fall. So I went to this place called an indoor skydiving facility. I don't know if you guys have ever seen those things. They had this giant glass tube. They put me in a flight suit with a helmet and gave me somebody to help me, to teach me how to do it. And I got into the tube, and there was a fan in the floor, and it lifted me off the ground. So I was flying. The wind was keeping me up, and I learned how to soar, and I learned how to dive, and I learned how to do all these tricks. And then I also learned what it feels like to have the wind blasting me in the face, and I understand what it feels like to fall. And I realized it's like, this is my job. I have to do things like this all the time. So I think if you're the kind of person that wants to have adventures and learn new things and experience all kinds of crazy stuff, being a writer is probably the right job for you. So I think we have some time for some questions and answers. I will say, if you do not have any questions, I begin to ask you deeply personal questions, just to fill the time. Things that would be embarrassing and humiliating. And if you guys want to come up to the podium, we have
we can get a few questions in to Michael if you line up at the microphone very good. And to let you know that Michael will be at the autograph station, and you can ask your questions there also after the session. So we only have time for about 5 questions, so all right.
All right, guys, let's hold off.
All
Let's
right.
get this first group of questions going so that we can see how many more we can take, all right?
So tell us
So
your
everybody
name
else
and
who's
your
not
question.
at the microphone line right now, stay in your seats.
Yeah, guys, I probably can't answer everything, but I will be signing the books after this, so you can ask me in person. All right.
Okay.
It's a madhouse.
Now, we're ready.
This is exactly the attention I always hope for.
We're ready for our first question, but we have to get quiet
All
so
right,
we
we're
can
going to
hear.
start with our first
Okay, guys.
question, so everybody listen up.
What was the show called that you did on Nickelodeon?
What were the shows I worked on Nickelodeon? A little thing called Rugrats. Worked on a show called The Fairly Odd Parents. And this show you guys have probably never seen about a sponge that lives in a pineapple. But I worked on a whole bunch of different stuff. Yeah. All right.
What happened to the parents in the Brothers Grimm book?
In my book, what happened to the
Yeah.
parents?
Yeah.
I can't tell you that. That's total spoiler stuff.
I really want.
The spoiler is they were in the backyard the whole time. No. You find out eventually, I promise.
Okay.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
On your website, it says that The Sisters Grimm has been optioned for an animated series. Do you have any updates on that?
It was optioned by Amazon Prime. So we're writing a script right now, and hopefully it'll make it on to the streaming service. But it is going to be animated, yeah. All right, guys, two
Just
more.
a quick break. Teachers, I'm going to ask you to keep your students
You're welcome.
seated until the event is over. Thank you.
What inspired you to make the book Sisters Grimm?
Well, to be honest,
Can you repeat the question?
the inspiration for the book was I went to a bookstore and I noticed that there were only 2 kinds of books. There's books for boys, where the boy goes to wizarding school and fights a dragon and gets to ride a monster around. And then there are books for girls, where the girl takes care of a pony. And I just didn't know any girls who would pick a pony over a dragon ride. None of the women in my life were like that, and I just thought it was time that there was a book out there where the girl was the hero and the boy was the sidekick. So that was sort of the motivation. I think how about this one is the last one? I'm sorry, guys.
How did you feel when you were making the book?
Well, I was scared because the truth is I didn't know if I could write a book. I'm not a great speller, and my grammar is not always the best. So I wasn't sure I was smart enough. But then someone told me that I didn't have to be great at those things because I would have help from an editor who would help fix all my dumb mistakes. But then when the book came out, I was like thrilled. So it was a great feeling. All right, guys, did you have fun? I'm so glad you came. I'm going to go sign some books now. I will see you there. All right. Have a good time at the Miami Book Festival.
Thank you, everybody. He will be signing books down the hall in just a few minutes.